welcome to Our Planet. Today we've travelled down to Oxford again. Thank you very much to our guest Ben, who's welcomed us into. Is it your brother's?
It's my brother's place,
yeah. It's a pleasure to be here. Today we're going to discuss. It's a two-part, if that's all right. The first one discussing the Mansfield UFO case. That happened. Is it 1987? That happened. Yeah. And then the second part. We're going to change subject to the paranormal, maybe do an overview of that, and maybe talk about Helen Duncan a bit about her and in relation to the paranormal. But we can start, if it's okay, about the Mansfield case. So yes, it's in 1987. If you could just give us an overview of the case, and we'll start from there, please.
Sure. And this is a really remarkable UFO incident that took place. Now, the UFOs, there's different types of UFO encounters. I mean, we know about the Hynek scale. The first kind is where you see one. The second kind is where it leaves behind some kind of physical evidence, and the third kind is when you see the aliens, like in the famous movie with that title. Now, the close encounter, the second kind, is where there is physical evidence left behind, is sometimes evidence that's quite decisive. We know that there's certain occasions where sometimes people find marks on the ground, such as the Livingston incident, the Lonnie Zamora sighting. But at other times, there's something, for example, like a piece of wreckage from a UFO, because sometimes these things do appear to come to grief on the Earth's surface. And when that happens, it's obviously, if people find this kind of, say, the crashed object, the crashed craft, or the dead aliens inside, or even the living aliens in some cases, which has been reported. Obviously, then there's no pretense that this is anything other than what it appears to be, which is a craft from another world that has encountered the Earth. You know, the idea that anyone can dismiss this as rabbit scrapings or something is nonsense. Now, when that happens, wherever it happens in the world, it seems the same thing seems to follow, as if there's some kind of global policy in place. And that is, the government will see off the area, they will salvage the evidence, they'll salvage the crashed UFO, and then they'll pretend nothing happened, or they'll make up some cover story to explain what happened. And there are numerous. I'm surprised how many of these events there are. I mean, the most famous is the Roswell incident from July 1947, New Mexico, USA. But this is actually just one of many. In fact, this book here, Magic Eyes Only by Ryan Wood, excellent book, quite hard to get hold of actually. I'm borrowing this off somebody. It details 75 events within a period between 1897 and 1997, so within a century. There's 75 events in it, and it doesn't record the event I'm going to talk about in a minute.
Oh, I was going to say that.
So even if just 10% of these are real, because as you can imagine, this is quite a regular thing. These craft, whatever reason, whether they crash or whether they crash themselves, there's all different kinds of theory about what happens. Now, I believe one such case happened in November of 1987 in Nottinghamshire, England, which I know is quite close to where you guys
It is, it's very local, yes.
I used to be quite regularly in that area because I had a girlfriend who lived in Bingham, just east of Nottingham. So I've split up with now, so it's hard. So I don't have that base of operations anymore. But I did get a chance to do several investigations into this particular encounter, and I was helped by several local researchers. I mean, a lot of what I gathered is not my own field research. It's the field research was done by several people near when it happened. There's a guy called Ashley Rye, who was the first person to bring this to ufological press. There was actually something called Skywatch, which was a first generation kind of UFO website, e-zine type thing on the Usenet internet on the internet service, which was kind of like a precursor to the World Wide Web. And it appeared in the early. It appeared actually in just a few years after that. And this was reported by several people at Nexus magazine, which I absolutely love. They reported it in 1997. And there's a guy called Harry Mason from Australia who wrote about this, and his article in Nexus actually was, it seemed to, well, I'll go into a little bit about the theories about what actually happened. Harry, I think he made some mistakes actually, Harry Mason. But I actually heard about this. I was just reading through it, and I thought I could go and have a look at that. And so I got hold of a friend of mine who lives in the area, he's a ufologist who studies ufology and paranormal conspiratorial phenomena. A guy called Daniel Bostock.
Yes,
He lives in Kirkby and Ashfield.
Okay.
And so he and I got together and we did an investigation based on the evidence, based on Harry Mason's article and on the other media spots that I actually found. And we took a little drive up to a place called Thieves Wood, which is south of Mansfield.
Yeah.
And we had a look around there, and then I got I made a video about this, which I put on YouTube, and then I was contacted by Nigel. It wasn't a very good video; it was rather scrappy. But then I was contacted by a chap called Nigel. Who posted me. He says, "Ben," he says, "you were looking in the wrong place. I know exactly what happened and where it happened."
Okay.
But what actually happened was it was actually the 12th of November 1987. This is what was actually reported in the media, and this is basically what was originally released. It was covered in the local press as well, the Nottingham Post. But it's described as a huge aerial explosion, a freak storm, freak thunderbolt, an aerial explosion, which damaged a number of properties centred in the Kirkby area. But there was the actual field for damage was 8 to 10 square miles. So it's quite a large area that was actually affected. It was heard from much, much further. It was heard much, much further. But it was really strange because there's no reports of any cloud, any wind, any rain. Oddly enough, the Great Storm happened the following day. I don't know if there's a connection. The Great Storm 19, which affected mostly southern England, but I don't know if there's a connection there. I'm not sure.
That's Michael Fish.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Follow Michael Fish.
But I don't know if there's a connection there. But basically, there was people heard a huge explosion and damage done to properties. To give you an example, some structural damage was done close to the epicenter of the explosion, ground zero of the explosion. TV aerials were split in two. Power lines collapsed. And there were 40 insurance claims made in one street alone. There was several damage to the electrical grid. There was damage to water supplies. Daniel, in particular, he remembers this. He was just a small child at the time, I think, or a teenager. But he remembers having the water cut off in that area because he remembers the actual explosion. And what's really strange is that it wasn't just sound. It wasn't just. Harry Mason's theorised it might be something. It might have been an aerial nuclear explosion.
All right.
Which would account for some of the damage, the shock wave. And for instance, also there was some damage to electrical equipment, such as TV and video recorders were damaged. And one of the principal witnesses to this is actually a guy who runs a TV and video repair shop in that area. And this was in the days when he had to VHS. And these were all people were bringing these things in, wanting them fixed. People who rented them wanted them replaced. And so. Serious damage done, really. But it wasn't just sound. There was someone described how the sky suddenly went bright red. I don't believe, for example, I must say I don't believe there was a nuclear explosion because you'd have heat effects.
Yeah.
You'd have fire starting. People in the open air would experience flash burns and things like that. There would be signs of a heat flash. There's none of that.
Okay.
But witnesses saw, what they did see in the sky was someone described the sky suddenly becoming bright red. That was interesting. And then people saw more than one strange object. More than one. Yeah, there was more than one strange object in the sky, bright lights, that were looping. They weren't going in straight lines. They were looping and wheeling, brightening and getting brighter and getting darker, which indicates, or brighter and dimmer, which indicates they could be varying in altitude. These were first seen actually around at the same time as the explosion, but they were seen quite a long way away, and the first sightings were at Sherwood Forest of Robin Hood fame, which is just to the east of Mansfield. And it appears that these lights they weren't going in a straight line, but they were travelling in a certain direction, which was southwest, because then they appear in the Ashfield district and that area. That's when that seems to be where most of this was happening, and this indeed is where the action appears next. Now, this area, it's interesting because the skeptics will say, well, how come UFOs never crash in populated areas? It's always in the devil's armpit Nirvana, isn't it? When no one's around to see it. They never. But there's several reasons to explain this. Firstly, if you look at the map of the world, look at population density charts, most of the world is empty. Humans in large numbers only occupy probably less than 5% of the actual Earth's surface.
Yeah.
You look at it like where you get really dense populations, like the equivalent of say southern England. It's just like the European plain. There's the lowlands of China and India, several little spots in the United States and North America and places like that. I mean the big cities. But apart from that, there's much more spread out. People are much more spread out, and indeed. Over half the Earth's surface, the land surface, is practically uninhabited. Right.
Yeah,
No one lives.
Exactly, yeah.
It's either too cold, it's too hot, it's too mountainous, it's other reasons people just can't settle there.
And there's been UFOs seen overseas as well.
Well, yes, exactly.
So
and you get crashes,
well.
you get UFO sightings, and indeed, I think, crashes. And this is an example. I mean, the area we're talking about here is part of what's today called the Nottingham conurbation, which is the city of Nottingham and various large towns around it, particularly to the north. That term wasn't used in those days, but that's what geographers call it today. But in the area we're talking about, it's basically a patchwork of large towns, forests, and farmland. And there was actually 11,000 people at the time. There was 11,000 people living in the area where this event happened, and it's probably gone up by now. So potentially there's a very large number of witnesses, and indeed there were. But what happened was There's several different stories several different stories like the sky turning red, but then we have the multiple sightings in the sky, which is very interesting. Now, this is what happened next is it appeared that at least one of these objects came to grief on the Earth's surface. It actually crashed. Yeah. Now, what happened was something came down in Thieves Wood, which is why I went there. Something came down in Thieves Wood, but there was nothing significant. No, there was no significant large object found there, which means it looks like this craft came down and then got up in the air again. Okay. Right, it's almost like it bounced. It's been described as bouncing, but it did leave distinctive evidence there. This is what I was looking for. I went to Thieves Wood with Daniel, and later I went on a second expedition with Nigel.
Okay, there's another shot of the tree now. This is what we were looking at. It's obvious this has not been cut with a saw. It's been snapped by something. Whether it's fire, whether it's burnt by fire, whether it's struck by an object, it's definitely crash. I mean, this is interesting, Dan, because in the Kecksburg incident in Pennsylvania in 1965, which was another crash retrieval, the Pennsylvania Roswell, as it's sometimes called, you had an object crashing in the middle of the woods, and you can go back there today. You can still see the dead trees. We were asking how long would it take a tree to rot, and it may take a long time. Yeah. Because it's just a wooden post, basically.
I mean, if I was working for the military and I wanted to know the spot, I'd leave a tree like that standing.
That's a good point. Yes. Maybe it marks it out for something. It's an important question. So that is the site of the crash of the Nottinghamshire Roswell spacecraft, or whatever it was. I don't like spacecraft refers to our own things like space shuttle and rockets, and I don't actually, you shouldn't use that word really for extraterrestrial object. But something came down there. Like I say, this area was sealed off for about a week. You reckon, Nigel? More than a week? A week. In that time, as you see, there was a fire in the woods over there, a few miles away. There was a topsoil removed, and the object, whatever crashed here, was salvaged. Yeah, it was salvaged by the government, as with Roswell, as with these various other incidents that happened. It was salvaged. Now, something that size, 50 feet across, how would they have got it out?
That is a good question. Well, the object initially was calculated being 30 or 50 feet diameter. So whether it broke up...
Assuming it was in one piece,
They could have broken it up on site and transported it on low load of trucks, which I think they did, because I don't think the military helicopter would be able to lift something that large.
Depends on how much it weighed, but whether it would actually fit inside the Chinooks.
But at the end of the day, they can just chuck a tarpaulin over it on a low loader and take it down with a escort, you know.
Yeah, that's what they did at the Kecksburg crash.
Because the average person in the street, especially in this country, wouldn't pay any attention to it anyway, because...
Yeah.
Because Nigel, this is Nigel, what's his name? Nigel Crowley, sorry Nigel. he's the guy who really knows, he's got the gens on this, he really has. But again, he doesn't talk much publicly, he's not like me, he doesn't go public very often, although he did appear in my second film on the subject. So Dan and I basically contacted Nigel when Nigel would agreed to help us out.
And he's okay to be. Was he on the film?
He was, yeah.
So he's agreed.
He's okay. He
Yeah.
may, whether he'd be willing to do any more interviews, I'm not sure. But I know that he's more private than most,
Right,
say,
yeah,
myself.
Yeah.
But what happened was there was this area around Thieves Wood. The reason I was so keen to explore it is because it had been cordoned off at the time. What happened was there was. I'll tell you what happened to the craft once I believe it got into the air. It flew on for another 4 miles over the Misk Hills, and it came down in the grounds of Annesley Hall, and that's where it stayed.
Right.
It landed there, and it didn't get up again. And this would be, if this was an aircraft, for instance, a helicopter, something we know, we would say that it was in trouble and it crashed. Whether that's actually what happened, I don't know. We don't know exactly why these craft do this sort of thing because we don't really know how they work. Or even really what they are. I mean, it's a big mystery. But this is an interesting thing. By 2:15 a.m., helicopters were seen overhead, and these were military helicopters, shining lights down on the ground. Now, that's a common thing today. We have police helicopters in most big towns now. This was rare in those days, and people noticed that there were large helicopters, including a Chinook, which is a large transport craft. It can carry troops, it can also carry equipment and things like that. And it's got very distinctive 2 rotor blades in tandem, so people obviously would recognise that for what it is. Now, it turns out that these were actually deployed from RAF Coningsby and RAF Cranwell, and I think Cranwell now shut down. But I mean, the fact that I was talking to a few people about this, and they said, people, for instance, who've been in the RAF, and they said there's no way they could have got there that quickly unless they knew in advance that something was going to happen. They didn't have to know exactly where this thing would land, otherwise they just stationed the troops on the ground where this thing appeared, close encounter style. But they knew the general area, they knew that something in the general area was going to happen because they moved forces forward into the area where they thought something was about to happen. Or they knew something was about to happen. Now, how they knew, I don't know. It's a big question about how they knew something like that was about to happen, and they knew the general area about where it was going to be. Close enough so they could get the troops there ready to move forward immediately as soon as this event happened. You see the same thing at the Berwyn Mountains incident. This happened in January 1924 in northeast Wales, where again you get the large explosion and you get something on the ground, and you get immediate response from the military, which means again they knew something was going to happen. And there's been another more recent case I'll maybe talk about in a minute where we see the same pattern. Also in Wales, that was.
I was going to bring it up, but I thought I'd let you.
Definitely we'll come on to that because there's a lot of similarities. But the whole of Thieves Wood was sealed off. There was a cordon. I mean, there was like a triangular-shaped cordon. There was the West Nottinghamshire College at the top, and then there was Kirkby and Ashfield on the bottom left, and then there was there's a town Ravenshead on there. And the main road, is it the A60 that goes between Nottingham and Mansfield?
I think it is, isn't it?
It's called the
A6.
It's the main road.
That's who goes to.
There's a main artery that runs between Nottingham and Mansfield. That was closed, which means that the traffic was diverted for a space of 4 days to a week. So it's a long time. And I'm one of the guys I spoke to. I did this talk in Nottingham. One guy said he put his hand up. So I remember that. I was a lorry driver at the time, and I remember I had to go all the way around Blydydd, which is this little village, and there's some small roads, and basically there was terrible traffic jams. Because all that traffic that normally goes along the A60 was going all down these tiny little country lanes around these little places like Linby and Blydydd and places like that. And so then, now, according to Dan told me that he remembers hearing that there was a crash helicopter in the woods, and that was why this was going on. The BBC Radio Nottingham had actually done this. And of course, there's no recording of this, there's no record.
So they report it as a crashed helicopter as opposed to
a crash helicopter in the woods,
yeah.
Just to explain, I suppose people would have asked why there's police roadblocks at every road and things like that. Now, but then they must have got a bit suspicious because normally you wouldn't normally have the area sealed off for an entire
Yeah.
week. 'Cause that's a large area.
Yeah.
And you also have people that sit in the army are in the area. They just in military trucks. They just in army helicopter, RAF helicopters and things like that. So it must have raised people's curiosity. Now, there's no mention of this in the media at the time, in say, the newspapers. The local press didn't cover this. The only media that, Dan and Nigel have gone through the archives and they can't find anything.
So it was reported very minimal.
Yeah, unless the records have been removed.
Yeah.
So it's possible that it was reported in the local press, but it's all gone down the memory hole, as they say.
But it never reached mainstream. Is that
It never really, no.
As in
it was never
nationals.
National, no. There's no national reporting on this. And there was minimal local reporting, as I said, BBC Radio Nottingham. According to Dan, he heard him say it. I don't know. I mean, this is just a recollection Dan has from when he was a teenager at the time. What happened was this was interesting. Somebody put in a Freedom of Information Act request to the Ministry of Defence, and they got a result. Nick Pope actually mentioned this. And this was reported in the Nottingham Post in 2010. And it has, do aliens exist? If so, have they visited Mansfield? August 2010. And it talks about the new release government reports. The National Archive is releasing thousands of pages of previously classified MOD documents. Now, originally, these things have been put openly, but someone actually got hold of this through a FOIA. Someone, I think, working with Ashley Rye, originally. But it just basically talks about what we're talking about here. It's a short article. But what happened was I got in touch with, like I say, we went on a first expedition to the woods. Nigel got in touch and said that we were in the wrong place, so he took us to the right place. Now, what there is, if you go into the woods, this is Forestry Commission land, and all the trees are sort of laid out in little blocks. There's one that is empty. There's nothing growing there. Well, there was nothing growing there. There is now. There's some small trees and some bushes, but apparently until about 2000, so that's 13 years after the event, nothing grew there, and there's just sand. Now, this is interesting because I went to see Dan and Nigel took me to the location, and I filmed it. It's about it's a square space about 100 feet by 300 feet, I'd say, in a clearing in the woods. And the first thing that strikes you, it's very bare there. There's some bushes, but the soil is very sandy. And what Dan and Nigel told me was that the military had actually taken away. They'd actually dug up a foot of topsoil from that entire area, and they'd taken it away in dumper trucks, and they'd replaced it with sand. They'd sprinkled large amounts of sand down there, which, if you can think about that, it's an enormous effort to do that. They must have. I mean, I don't think the army has any equipment like that. They must have brought in a contractor to do it. But if you imagine the effort of digging up a foot of topsoil of an area 100 by 300 feet, that's a massive amount, tons of topsoil, and they're replacing it with tons of sand. They did it all in the space of a week, so it's a huge operation. Now, the reason why they might have done this, and because you see the same thing at the Roswell incident from 1947, it was reported that this is what they did there, and the reason is, firstly, they may have been concerned some kind of contaminant. It's possible this, whatever it was, we don't know no one knows where it came from. It could have some kind of pathogen that could be harmful, a disease, a chemical, something radioactive, and also it's possible that small amounts of debris were left behind. It may have left something behind there, like a piece of the craft, or small fragments, which is what you see at Roswell.
But I don't know if anything was physically found. There's reports of actually anything.
Not from that area, no.
Oh, right,
not from things wood.
Yeah.
Although it's possible that the reason they removed the topsoil was so they could sift through it and see if there's something too small to be seen might be there, because that happened at Roswell.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't want that lying around for years later, ufologists coming and picking it up.
Yeah.
That's definitely. I know people have been like, Don Schmidt, the Roswell researcher. He actually he went back to the place where one of the crash sites, and he sifted through the soil. He went and he did another investigation. They couldn't find anything, which means that the original collectors had done a very good job. So they're very, very keen to get rid of everything, absolutely everything. So they didn't want anyone finding it. And I knew that the soil was more sandy there, and I saw some molehills where you can clearly see there's sand mixed in with the soil even now. And I moved to another area in the woods to check as a control to compare the two. And there's definitely a different quality of soil.
Yeah.
There's a kind of brown, loamy substance in the woods. But you go into this clearing and it's like sand. It's really weird.
So it's been specifically put there.
Yeah. And because Nigel also said that the trees had been burnt. He said there'd been a big forest fire there when this thing came down. So when this thing came down in Thieves Wood, it set fire to the woods. It was a huge forest fire.
Right.
And he said that the fire brigade responded from as far away as Bingham. There was massive response from the fire brigade, and they came to put the fire out. And he said there's actually burn damage to some of the trees nearby. That's an interesting that's a very interesting what happened there. This thing obviously was hot. It was generated a lot of heat. It set fire or somehow it set fire to the woods. Now what happened after that? Because we looked over this place. It's very easy to examine. Anyone could do this actually. You can go visit. It's on public land. You can go and walk around there. And there's I'm thinking of like we're looking for taking someone out who knows how to scan for residual radiation using a Geiger counter. I'm in touch with a guy who knows how to do that. I think that's the next step is to do that.
That would be interesting.
I'll come along. I'll ask Nigel and Dan if they want to come along, and I'll let you guys know if we sort this out. But I mean, I've got to get the guy. Obviously, I'll have to sort of like arrange it with him. So
Okay.
that's the next stage. Now that'll be very interesting because if we have if there's high radiation levels in that clearing, that could indicate that it's something left over when it's craft. Although these things do fade with time. Radiation fades.
Of course.
With time. You know, if it goes like Hiroshima and Nagasaki in places where they detonated atomic bombs, they're perfectly safe now. You know, the background radiation is back to normal. Now, what happened next is we went to Annesley Hall. Now, Annesley Hall it's an interesting place actually. It belongs to the Chayworth family. Now these were the original sheriffs of Nottingham, but they weren't bad people. But there's this hall. It's actually a derelict building. It's built in several phases, and they're all derelict to a greater or lesser degree. There's like these servants' quarters, which is the newest part, and they've got broken windows in. And so all of it's derelict, and the old bit is just like ruins. It's just like stumps masonry. But excuse me. Most of Annesley Hall you can't actually get onto. It's very heavily guarded. Now to get to Annesley Hall, you have to go. Well, basically, junction 27 of the M1. It's just off there. And interestingly, the M1 was not shut during this whole period because that would have been very, very obvious, and there would have been records of that, and more people would have remembered. But that was kept open, and there was also a cordon around Annesley Hall. So the same thing happened at Thieves Wood, happened at Annesley Hall. The army moved in, police set up roadblocks for a period of about a week. Now, interestingly, the slip road to junction 27, there's an old bomb. There's a nuclear bomb shelter. There's an old Cold War bunker. It's closed now, but it may have been manned at the time. I don't know if there's a connection there, whether they were involved anyway. But it's literally just a few 100 yards from where this object came down. I don't know the size of this object. I don't know how big it is or what shape it is, or whether there were aliens inside it. We don't know anything about it really, because no one saw it up close, apart from the people collecting it. Now, it's came down. The craft came down at a place called the Warren, which is in Annesley Hall, the grounds of Annesley Hall, and it's like a hill where there's a copse of trees and there's a lake. It's actually is actually fish in the lake. It's private fishing only. I mean, a lot of the people who talk about this are actually people who do a bit of poaching, and they've been on there. They've actually been. No one was actually in the area when this happened, but some guy I know who says he regularly goes in and fishes in the lake illegally. Well, used to anyway. You can't do it now. He remembers strange things going on, and he remembers that the name the Warren disappeared off the maps. The Ordnance Survey took the name the Warren off the maps when that happened, which is odd. Now, the closest you can get to the Warren is you've got this place called Dog and Bear Lane, which is at the side of Annesley Hall. And you can get to within a couple of 100 yards of the actual landing site. The actual crash or landing site, what's interesting about it, if you look at it on Google Earth, you can see where it is because the ground is discoloured. There's a patch, there's a mark on the ground. You can't see from ground level, but you can distinctly see the ground is a different colour. Now, I had a look through the entire area, looked at all the other fields. This is like just an arable field. And it grows, the same crop grows, but I can't see that effect in any other field in the area, only in that one field, which indicates that either the ground is a different colour or that the crops that are growing are different colours. For some reason, maybe there's a different quality which causes them to grow differently, and this could be something such as radiation or some other contaminant that's affected the soil. We see the same thing at Cable Green, and Cable Green is a field just to the east of Rendlesham Forest, where there was a major UFO event in 1980, and there was some research done on the landing site of the craft that was seen there, and again you see the same effect. You see this, like there's something different in the soil.
So this is the site that Nigel brought you to. Was this the one? Yeah.
He took me there, and we got as close as we could, but security there was very tight.
Yeah.
They have these people there, technically they're gamekeepers, but I mean, I think there seem to be rather a lot of them. I mean, and we were walking up Dog and Bear Lane. This car drove up to the front of the servants' quarters, which were just across the way, and I took photos of this because they wound the windows down. I'm sure these people were watching us. I'm sure there were people in that car watching us, and it felt a bit nervous, as if they were warning us off. And apparently people trying to get in there are arrested immediately. They are tackled by these gamekeepers and they're handed over to the police. These are like the camo Jews around every hall. They really are.
Has the security stepped up since the event, or is it just?
It is increased. And the guy who goes poaching in the lake, he has said you just can't do it anymore. You can't get in. He used to be quite lax. I mean, they used to just turn a blind eye. Well, it was technically illegal, but no one bothered him that much because it was only him doing it. No one really bothered. But now, these guys, they wander around. They're armed as well. They're armed. I mean,
they don't want you to go in, do they?
So if you're going to enter, you do it. I mean, I've not heard of anyone being killed unless they come back. Unless they dump the body out in the lake. But you know what I mean. You've got to be cautious if you're going to go in there. Now, Nigel actually he asked about this. He said, well, how come, why is there this security? Because it seems odd that there would be all the security. I mean, obviously there's like the land, which is where there's game and things like that. But as I said, the security was stepped up after 1987, and the actual buildings itself, like I say, nobody technically lives there. It's derelict. The Chayworth family lost it in a poker game or something like that, and they went bankrupt eventually. This was sometime in the 17th century. They basically lost the house, and whoever bought.
It's been empty since then.
It's been pretty much empty. Well, there was a little bit of occupation, like I said. They set up this. The new building, I think, is 19th century, but even that's gone now. Even that's derelict. So there's nobody technically living there, but there are lights on in the building at night. And Nigel contacted the land management agency that deals with this, and basically hires the security guards and manages the security guards. And he just asked a couple of questions. The person just literally slammed the phone down. He says, "Can I ask a couple of questions about the security and things like that on Annesley Hall site?" And the phone went down immediately. And they would not talk to him, which I think was very odd. I think that's very, very strange indeed.
I mean, it seems like a very
Just a
normal general question.
If it's a
You wonder
private
why,
public area, you know.
I do wonder why that they have this. It seems there's a lot of security for an area that really doesn't need it, and because, like I said, there's nothing to nick there. There's just a derelict building. And so Nigel said you can't get on there. You literally can't get onto that site. They must. I mean, the fact that there's not much of a fence. I mean, you can approach it from the road nearby, and there's like a fence. It's just like a simple barbed wire fence. It's quite easy to climb over. But he said that people who've done it have immediately been apprehended, which means there must be sort of like night vision cameras in that area. These things aren't cheap, and so to man them 24/7 is expensive. They don't want anyone going on that site. But there's nothing to see there now. If something crashed there, it's gone. I mean, when they lifted the cordon, it was gone, and it had been taken away. where we don't know. We don't know where it's went. Yeah, I mean the cordon. I mean you couldn't get anywhere near Annesley Hall from as far right up to the limits of Hucknall to the south. We were completely off limits for a week, and as far to the east as Linby, you couldn't actually. That area was completely sealed off. Basically, the whole Miss Kills area was sealed off by the military for the space of a week. Very, very odd case indeed. I've got to thank Nigel actually for doing this, because Nigel Crowley, really, he was invaluable in this particular project of mine. I mean, I just basically all I've done is publicise his research and to put my own commentary on it and my own ideas connected to it. But there are some weird things going on. For example, there's been several theories. Harry Mason speculated that it might be an aerial nuclear explosion, and he also said that there was the lights could have been some kind of the lights in the sky could have been some kind of weapon that the military were testing. Would you explain why there was such a quick response? Because the army were on the scene in minutes. The RAF were flying out, and they were on the scene literally within 45 minutes. And if the MOD was had some kind of secret weapons test in that area, like experimental aircraft or some missile, this is what Harry Mason says. Then they would probably have a few battalions nearby, you know, just to respond if they were needed in the event of a security breach. Indeed, this has actually happened during the tests of various secret aircraft in the United States. They have actually had some people on standby just to manage security if there happened to be a crash, because the importance of keeping this thing secret. The F-117 Nighthawk, the stealth fighter, that actually did come down in an area of California, and it was very, very carefully covered up. So that's what Harry Mason said. But I mean, there's some problems with that idea. If you did have a secret weapon, you wouldn't test it in an area like Nottingham. No. There are too many people around. You'd find somewhere more remote. There are plenty of places you can actually test secret weapons that are not only sealed off, they're essentially private military land, but that there are places which are so isolated that people generally don't go there anyway. A good example is the Western Isles Missile Range, which is the Atlantic Ocean, basically, to the west of RAF Benbecula in the northwest Scotland. There's the Defence Missile Training Estate in Wiltshire, like Salisbury Plain. There's some areas of Dartmoor. Again, these are places without a permanent human population. They're basically uninhabited areas. Why not go there? Why not go to the Falkland Islands? Why not go to Greenland to do this sort of thing? There's all kinds of places you can go where you don't have to worry about the security issues, because no one's there to see if it's so.
It doesn't make sense.
Another possibility is that this was some kind of attack by the Soviet Union, because of course the Soviet Union. This was the Cold War. So this is another thing that people say. Well, maybe this was the Russians. Either they were attacking us, or they were harassing us in some way, or doing something to test our defences, or something like that. Which doesn't make sense either for several reasons. Firstly, it's an extremely reckless thing for them to do, considering we have like a mutually assured destructive nuclear deterrent on both sides. And it's a very unstable equilibrium. You know, if they suspected that we were being attacked, they'd fire missiles back at us. Before you know it, there'd be missiles flying all over the place. We'd all be dead. So no one's going to risk something like that. It's just not worth it. Another problem with that is that if this had happened maybe 10, 20 years earlier, you could have said it would have been more likely. But in 1987, the Cold War was essentially winding down. In 1985, I believe, Mikhail Gorbachev became Soviet Premier. He was the last Premier of the Soviet Union. He brought in his glasnost and perestroika. And he he made friends, and started treating the West as allies, especially Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, and Margaret Thatcher as well. Our Prime Minister at the time was Margaret Thatcher. They were good friends, Gorbachev and her. He came to her funeral a couple of years ago.
He did,
He's one of the few people who looks sad, actually. But so there was it seems unlikely, given the cooling of the Cold War of that period, that something like that would happen. I mean, indeed, 5 years later, the Soviet Union was disbanded. I mean,
It was, yeah.
Gorbachev tried to save it and he couldn't, so it was disbanded.
It was
Then
officially done with 92, and it was officially
it was
No, yeah.
December 92, I think, or December 91. Sorry, that's
Oh yeah,
right.
yeah.
December
Yeah,
91.
yeah.
That was when the new flag was when the Russian Federation came
Yes,
about, which is what is today. So it seems very unlikely that was the case at all. So, as Sherlock Holmes said, you know, if you eliminate all other possibilities, what are you left with? You know, I mean, something happened there that was nothing to do with any human activity. This was something else. This was based on the response of the government to it. I believe it's something extraterrestrial. I think that's the most likely explanation.
Hello! And thank you very much for watching the video. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and I hope you did, please give it a little like. And of course, subscribe to our channel.
We also have our Facebook account, information is below, and the ways you can fund us is also down below. And remember, let's unite and not to fight.
And together, we can unite this planet better. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.